This is a joyous day. We have finally come to this introduction or this launch of the third series of learning to read Biblical Hebrew. And what makes me excited about this is that now for the first time we can start bringing together everything that we've looked at. Up to this point, we've looked at letters and a combination of letters to form words. But in any language, you need to start thinking about making sentences. You need to start combining words with meaning to provide you with more meaning. So one of the things that I've learned in my studies of Biblical Hebrew is I almost needed to start relearning English. Because if I ask you now, what is an adverb, an adjective, a preposition, a direct object, a subject, a verb conjugation, all of those things we've heard, but we've forgotten them. I've forgotten them. And so in order for me to explore and learn the Hebrew language, the syntax of the language, a lot of my understanding of the English language had to be revisited. So in this first episode, I want to lay out a roadmap of how we're going to do this. If we could commit to looking at the text and start dissecting sentences word for word, looking at what are the type of words, the type of speech, how does the word order work in comparison to English, for example, then we can start introducing a mind map, a roadmap, a flow chart of how we will approach the Hebrew Bible. Putting sentences together in Hebrew requires us to look at word order in sentences. And the basic word order of Hebrew does not start with a subject or an object as it often happens in languages like English and all of our Greco-Roman languages. In Hebrew, sentences normally start with a verb. And you may remember we've said that Hebrew is a verb-based language or an action-based language. Therefore, the word order in Hebrew basically looks something like this: verb, subject, object, as opposed to subject, verb, object that we find in English. As we will start dissecting sentences, this will be our guiding principle. We will start looking first of all for the verb. And there's a lot that we will say about verbs. Don't stress about that now. We will unpack the various forms of verbs that we get in Hebrew, and it does get a little bit layered. But it's fascinating if we look at, once we are able to spot the verb, it becomes easier then to spot, okay, who's doing the action and what is the action performed on? In other words, the subject and the object, as we very often find casually in English. And then stuff like adverbs and adjectives that clarifies the different objects and subjects, and even the verbs and prepositions and all of these English words that we have forgotten so long ago. For this first season, we will start with Genesis 1 verse 1, as I've promised for a long time. But in my mind, I'm going to break Genesis 1 verse 1 into 3 parts. The first part will be, let us just look at the Hebrew and apply all of the rules from the Hebrew alphabet, the letters, the vowel points, the syllabification, and just see if we can read. And I'm going to help you to pronounce it so that you hear the vocalization, and also so that you can see how do we actually just read the text way before we start understanding what we're reading. So part 1 will be a reading exercise, and with the reading also comes a writing exercise. And I'm going to encourage you that as you begin to read, that you would also, just parallel to that, learn the art of writing the text down. Even though there's 100 apps and 100 websites that you can find that'll help you copy paste the Hebrew text, my encouragement would be learn to write it in your own handwriting. Learn to put in the little dots, the macavs, everything. Learn to draw lines where you think a syllable might be cut off. Learn all those things by writing. There's no way I've found that you learn as quickly as you would write it down. Okay, so that's the first thing. Part 1 is a reading and writing exercise. Next up, we will look at basic dissection of the words. We will look at the first word in Genesis 1 verse 1, the second, the third, up to the 7th word, and start giving these words classification, groups, names. And then those classification patterns will begin to form the template for approaching any sentence in Hebrew. And yes, some books in the Bible are much more complicated in terms of the language. Some books are much more poetic. Some sentences in Hebrew are simple and easy, and we will start with the easy sentences after Genesis 1 verse 1. But understand that first we will look at the reading and writing, then we will start dissecting sentences and look at the syntax, the rules. And thirdly, we will start looking at the theological implications of what we are reading. I'm not going to tell you what you should believe, but I'm going to give you a template of how I approach the Hebrew. Now, first of all, you are going to need a Strong's Concordance in whichever fashion, form, a digital, a hard copy, whatever. Google it, you'll find Strong's Concordance. We will use Strong's Concordance to dig to root words. And then you will use the knowledge that we've started off with in season 1 to actually, when you find the parent root and even when you find the child root, to be able to say this word means the following. Then at least you can start applying your knowledge of ancient Hebrew to say, what could the cultural, the language, and therefore the theological implication be? This serves as an introduction. A roadmap is we're going to look at reading, writing, dissecting the sentences, and then just explore some of the theological meanings. I will never tell you what to believe, because how could I? I believe different things every year I go around the circle. I just want you to be able to start dealing with the text in a way that you become independent from somebody telling you what is written there. I hope this excites you. Let's dig straight into the reading of Genesis 1 verse 1.